Making headlines for this week of June 17th. Brexit cover-up. What EU controllers don't want Brits knowing ahead of referendum. EU discontent. A lot to learn about EU sentiment around Europe if only people look, listen, and learn. Manufactured terrorism. Former CIA agent shares journey towards her service and what she learned from it. And to believe or not. Cabal fleeing, Antarctic bases, and starship battles as current global power structure approaches implosion.
With news around, upon, within, and beyond our planet, the program making disclosure official. This is Cosmic Vision News. Here is Jeffrey West.
Greetings and blessings to all. Brexit moves to the pole position for the newscast this week ahead of the referendum in the UK next Thursday, the 23rd. It is unclear at this time which direction the vote will go, but regardless of the outcome, the stakes will ultimately be very high. Is it better to swallow a bitter pill now and take the pains of separation from the Union, or stay and watch those pains continue to only grow and not get better, while making only more painful to separate in the future? It is getting increasingly harder to see any benefits to staying in the EU when one truly understands what has been happening to countries like Ireland, Portugal, Spain, Italy, Greece, Bulgaria, and others, including the non-EU country of Ukraine. More on those in just a few minutes. The London Daily Mail's Daniel Hannan on June 14th posted an article revealing 10 alleged bombshells that are being intentionally kept hidden or otherwise covered up until the vote has taken place. And if the Brits vote to stay, they may suddenly find themselves being screwed by these landmines. Hannan writes, embarrassing leaks have revealed that British government officials colluded in Brussels to keep contentious issues about plans for making the EU into more of a superstate off the political agenda until after next week's referendum. Among the items, number 1, banning hair dryers. The EU plans to outlaw high-energy dishwashers, hair dryers, and other household appliances. It comes after lobbying by German manufacturers who see an opportunity to keep competitors out of the market. Number 2, a bigger budget. A midterm review of the European Union's 7-year budget was due at the start of the year, but it's been postponed till after the referendum. Brussels officials privately admitted they were reluctant to give extra ammunition to British Leave campaigners. Number 3, open borders. David Cameron tried and failed to get an agreement that the EU's free movement rules would not apply to countries that might join the EU in the future, such as Albania, Serbia, Macedonia, Montenegro, and Turkey. The article has suggested that by voting to remain, the UK could be forced to take up to 1.5 million Turks in visa-free access. Number 4, more bailouts. The Prime Minister has said very clearly that Britain is exempt from any further bailouts. The trouble is, he said that in 2013. In June 2015, when Brussels needed more cash for the third Greek bailout, the UK was forced to loan it £600 million. Number 5, deeper integration. The EU is responding to the euro and migration crisis in the way it responds to everything, by giving more power to Brussels. To anyone else, it might seem odd to prescribe more of the medicine that sickened the patient in the first place, but Eurocrats are Eurocrats. Number 6, human rights. The European Court of Justice, the ECJ, began life as, in effect, the highest tribunal of a trade bloc. Yet, as the EU extended its powers into new areas, the ECJ is now more like a Supreme Court. The greatest extension of its powers has come with the adoption of the EU's Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms. Suddenly, as well as economic issues, Euro judges settle human rights questions. As CVN has been trying to teach listeners, human rights and commercial courts are a conflict of interest. Human rights cannot exist within a commercial court, and thus commercial judges are being given greater power to rule on humans as commercial entities. Number 7, arts import licenses. Brussels plans an import licensing regime which would again subject London to more cost and bureaucracy than overseas rivals. Number 8, wrecking the ports. The EU wants to oblige every port to have more than one provider for its internal services, such as mooring, dredging, and unloading. Everyone agrees that the measure will deter investment. Every British port operator and every trade union opposes it. Every British MEP, Member of Parliament, from the Greens to UKIP voted against it. But it went through the European Parliament anyway, only to have the final decision suddenly deferred. Number 9, quotas for online TV. The European Commission wants online providers to reserve 20% of their content for European programs, which should, it says, be given good visibility. And number 10, a European army. No one is talking about a European army except those people running the EU. The European Commission, in its formal statement, calls a European army a strategic necessity. One by one, the EU has acquired the attributes of statehood, a president, although unelected, and a parliament, a currency and taxes, embassies and a foreign minister, a Supreme Court and a legal system, a national anthem and a flag. A European army is the logical next step. In another article, Jaina Rana of Britain's investmentweek.co.uk website wrote on June 15th that Lord Jacob Rothschild has said leaving the EU could lead to a damaging and disorderly situation in the UK as he urged Britons to vote Remain. Writing in a comment piece for The Times, Lord Rothschild said readers should not risk the well-being of our country, and European countries are better off together. Rothschild, who chairs the RIT Capital Partners Investment Trust, refers to his family businesses, which originated with 5 brothers setting up the first truly international banking system, operating from London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, and Frankfurt at the end of the 18th century. It is this family that created the global financial system that is currently enslaving humanity and ultimately destroying the planet. It was Mayer Amschel Rothschild who was quoted as saying, "Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws." That is what is being played out right now. It is a conflict of interest for Rothschild to even have an opinion to tell the people to stay under the enslavement of a system his family helped create, and a system from which his family has profited ultra-excessively, to the expense of Brits and others all over the world. Rothschild was quoted in the article as saying, "I can see no good reason why we should accept our playing a diminished role on the world stage." Now, one would only consider it a diminished role if one is perceiving their power from a position of superiority and control, and wished to maintain it. In a world of balance and fairness, it does not have to be a diminished role, but it can be a much more life-honoring role. The same could be said about comments made by IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde. Euronews quoted Lagarde on June 17th as saying that a Brexit is a concern for the whole world. This is an example of a loaded statement by Lagarde. From her perspective, representing an institution of Western cabal banking power, she believes that what she is saying is true. Brexit represents a concern for all the cabal interests worldwide, although she does not say this specifically. It could be considered an example of giving a half-truth. Interestingly, it was back in January, in a London Telegraph article by Maureen Kahn, who reported that a British exit from the European Union could see the UK becoming a safe haven amid a disintegrating Europe. This according to Barclays Bank. Khan added that if Britain voted for an EU exit, the political and institutional reverberations on the continent would be far greater than any economic fallout, said the bank, who compared the implications to that of a Grexit, meaning a Greek exit from the Union. A number of European countries would be caught in the grip of extremist left-wing and right-wing populist parties, pushing them towards leaving the EU, Barclays told their clients. If politics in the EU turned for the worse, the UK might be seen as a safe haven from those risks, reversing the euro's exchange rate appreciation, said the report's authors. In that environment, Scottish voters could be even less inclined to leave the relative safety of the UK for an increasingly uncertain EU. In the show summary, for those interested, a link to a video called Brexit the Movie, with more information leading up to what could be a seismic geopolitical tsunami for the global cabal if humanity stands in its power and its truth. As well, there is a Euronews article that offers what they claim to be an objective Brexit blog covering all sides of the debate. In other geopolitical news, as mentioned moments ago, the potential consequences of a Brexit will surely have an impact, emotionally at least, but literally also around Europe. Western media are desperately trying to keep any news of discontent and unhappiness from around Europe from getting into the awareness of the general population of the UK. It may be a losing battle, but those in control may still somehow find a way to steal the election. If the people of the UK needed to look to only one place to decide whether or not remaining in the EU is a good idea, they only need to look to Greece. After electing a government that promised to stand up to the EU bankers and restore the will of the people have discovered that the government was too weak to stand up to the unelected power brokers of the EU, who continue to demand more and more from the people. More austerity cuts are on the horizon for this country, and the people are now demanding the resignation of the so-called leftist government of Alexis Tsipras. With more on this, we have this report from Euronews.
Thousands of protesters have hit the streets of Athens, calling on the country's left-wing government to quit. Demonstrators gathered in the capital's Syntagma Square holding banners which read, "Resign and go home." The rally follows a wave of recent austerity reforms approved by Parliament, including pension cuts and tax hikes. They were demanded by the country's international lenders in exchange for vital bailout funds. The people came here spontaneously. They are all dissatisfied with this supposedly left-wing government that has turned out to be more right-wing than the real thing itself. The people are reacting to the endless lies and this government's political cheating. They took power with nothing but lies, lies and lies. I voted twice for Tsipras. He's kept none of his promises. They cut my pension in half. What else can I do? Our correspondent says, only 9 months after Syriza won a second successive general election, recent polls show a rapid decrease in the popularity of the radical left ruling party. And with more austerity on the horizon, this protest rally may well be just the tip of the iceberg for Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras and his coalition government in terms of what lies ahead.
Originally, the government of Tsipras defied all expectations and rose up in a wave of protest and resistance against the bureaucratic structures. The Syriza party was first elected in late January of 2015, but when it appeared that the government was not going to be strong enough to stand up to the EU bankers, then Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis submitted his resignation, and a second election was called by Tsipras later that year in September in an attempt to validate his political agenda. Although Tsipras did win a second time, he did not have the majority he once had. Now the people are reaching a point where they may have very little left to lose. Although the UK economy is stronger than the economy of Greece, it should be very clear the power that the EU bankers and power brokers have, and in every case so far, it has been the people who have been on the losing end, and it is this position that the people of the UK would be wise to learn from, so that they do not find themselves in a similar situation. Even the one agreement that the people have benefited most from, arguably the Schengen Agreement, which has allowed free movement of people between countries within the Union, has been corrupted and abused by power brokers who have created forced migrations of people into countries, causing an increased destabilization among numerous countries around Europe in an attempt to stir up fear and separation in support of a more militarized police state, an EU army, and justification for a stronger NATO, all of which is paid for by the people enduring harsh austerity measures. Shifting to the Netherlands, a London Express article by Tom Parfit on June 15th has reported that a staggering 80% of people surveyed by a national newspaper in the Netherlands believe the UK should take back control from Brussels on June 23rd. The sensational poll, carried out by De Telegraaf, lays bare their anger towards the EU amid the refugee crisis and concerns over the Eurozone. Many hope Brexit will deal a crushing blow to the doomed European project, which the front page of the paper brands a monster. This follows on information earlier this year in March when Switzerland's politicians voted to suspend their application to join the EU, perhaps sensing the coming fracture of the Union. In March, a Sputnik news article on the Swiss vote suggested that the removal of the long-standing application to join the Union was, in effect, an indirect show of support for the Brexit campaign. On June the 3rd, Neil Clark, in an article for RT, observed a possible fracture forming in Poland. Shifting over to this country now, he wrote that the Eastern European Republic was the country that, in the eyes of the Western elites at least, could do no wrong. Its free market economic reforms were lauded. Its spiky attitude towards Russia and Belarus was applauded. Poland was the great success story that others should copy. But is the love affair between Brussels and Warsaw coming to an end? This week, the European Commission formally adopted an opinion saying that there is a systemic risk to the rule of law in Poland, which could even lead to an imposition of sanctions. The cooling of relations can be seen in other ways as well. We've had a spate of articles in Western publications which used to sing Poland's praises, now telling us that we all ought to be terribly worried about the direction in which the country is heading. The Polish government is accused of trying to smother the country's highest court, the Constitutional Tribunal. Now, to hear this, it might sound like a bad thing, and this is what the EU power brokers want people to think. However, until one understands that most Western-controlled courts have been packed with people who serve commercial law and the interests of corporations and the global cabal, maybe Poland's trying to get control back of its Supreme Court might not be such a bad thing after all. The EU people would see this as a threat to the control they have had on Poland's Supreme Court. If people do not understand this, they might blindly accept the EU argument. Clark continues, the EU's attacks on the Polish government look hypocritical, bearing in mind the lack of concern they have shown regarding undemocratic developments in other countries in Europe in recent years. He closes with the following. It seems that for the EU elite and their media stenographers, anti-democratic reforms, which help shut down the opposition, are fine so long as they're aimed at commies and other undesirables. Only if the targets are elite-friendly, pro-EU, pro-globalization liberals is there a problem. In any case, do we really want to listen to lectures on democracy from a body that is inherently undemocratic? When we've got unelected EU commissioners giving us lectures on democracy and rule of law, then surely we have reached a world where Franz Kafka meets George Orwell. Democracy is indeed under threat all over Europe, writes Clark, not just in Poland. And the EU itself, with its highly selective commitment to constitutionalism and the rule of law, is an integral part of the problem. Concerning the Mohawk Initiative update for this week, I'm choosing to again move the update to next week's newscast. The information that I have relates to a particular discovery that has been made in the Brantford area, and this information has the potential to reshape history as it has currently been taught to us. So I would like to have a little bit more time to digest this information. So, having said that, the Mohawk Initiative update will be moved to next week's newscast. In general news, RT and several other sources this week are reporting on a video that has surfaced from a woman who spent a number of years within the CIA and is sharing a bit of what she has learned from the experience. Of course, it is always wise to use discernment when receiving information of this nature, but there are always gems of truth within the information shared if one is open and receptive to those gems of truth. According to RT on June 15th, a former CIA counterterrorism agent has said it is time to talk about why terrorism really happens and to address the misguided narratives that led to oversimplification of the situation and continued war. Amaryllis Fox worked on counterterrorism and intelligence in the CIA's clandestine service for 10 years. She told AJ Plus that the beliefs surrounding terrorism are stories manufactured by a really small number of people on both sides who amass a great deal of power and wealth by convincing the rest of us to keep killing each other. Arjun Walia, writing on June 14th for the Collective Evolution website, added the following information. According to the estimates of some historians, the United States classifies more than 500 million pages of documents every single year, which is why organizations like WikiLeaks and whistleblowers from various agencies remain so important to us all. Walia quotes former UK Foreign Secretary Robin Cook as saying that the truth is there is no Islamic army or terrorist group called Al-Qaeda, and any informed intelligence officer knows this. But there is a propaganda campaign to make the public believe in the presence of an intensified entity representing the devil only in order to drive TV watchers to accept a unified international leadership for a war against terrorism. The country behind this propaganda is the United States. In making that statement, Cook appears to be oblivious, or perhaps either deliberately ignorant, of Israel's involvement in those events as well. Walia sums up the disclosure by Fox the following way. He writes, "She is speaking to false flag terrorism, the idea that terrorist activities are created or that terrorists are forced into certain situations or brainwashed by Western military and intelligence agencies in order to convince the masses that there is a constant terror threat, that we are pitted against each other on purpose by a small group of elite people who have lots of power." Before we listen to her revelations of what she learned at the CIA, I came across a speech that Fox gave to a group of young people at a TEDx teen event. This will be a bit longer. She did this in 2013, but I feel that there are elements of empowerment within this that many will be able to use, and for others to see and understand better how one's choices in one moment has the potential to shape all that one can become in one's service. The interview started with her explaining her choice to choose between aeronautical engineering and flight school at a military school or Oxford in England to study law. She was interested in both, but terrified of the rules and disciplines that she felt would limit her creativity. She went on a humanitarian project to Thailand for a few weeks, and at the end, while getting ready to leave at the airport, she suddenly told her guide that she was going to stay. The audio clip starts from the moment she knew she had to stay.
Fast forward 15 years, and I can find in that moment the beginnings of my career, of my relationships, the beginnings of what keeps me up at night, what I teach my daughter, the books I choose to read. I can find the beginnings of who I am as a 32-year-old adult in that one single moment of terror and passion and conviction that swelled inside of me as I walked through those sliding doors into the sticky heat of a Bangkok afternoon. I was alone, abroad, with about $32 to my name, and I was operating on sheer gut instinct. There's a lot of work that's been done to understand instinct. Scientists have noticed that when test subjects are shown dozens of numbers flashed on a screen too fast for them to memorize or do any kind of arithmetic, more than 90% can still say which side of the screen would add up to a higher number. In that same way, we've all had the experience of looking up when someone across the room is looking at us. Those are simple evolutionary instincts developed over time to help us survive. But the moment of instinct I was following as I walked away from that gate was a different, more subjective kind. A judgment that might have been right for me while being wrong for somebody else. And that kind of instinct draws on a lifetime of accumulated experiences that are all quietly stashed away in our subconscious. And over time, as we're all busy living our lives, those chunks of experience begin to repeat themselves in fundamental but often imperceptible patterns. And it's those patterns that this kind of instinct can search and draw conclusions from when your conscious mind might not even know they exist. When I walked through those sliding doors, I thought I was doing something groundbreaking, something completely different from anything I'd ever done in my life up till that point. But the instinct to do it was really strong. And the reason it was strong is because it wasn't all that groundbreaking after all. My mother was an actress and a poet and taught me from my earliest memories to seek out new experiences and new environments. And I had ample opportunity to do it because I moved every year of my childhood. My dad, on the other hand, was an economist and an entrepreneur and instilled in me this deep love for writing plans and building organizations and challenging the status quo. I have this strong memory of being on holiday with my mother in Morocco, and she extended the trip spontaneously. And in the week that followed, both of us embarked on friendships that came to be really important to us later in life. Now, none of those random data points about my life occurred to me in the moment that I decided to stay, but they did occur to my subconscious. Somewhere deep in my inner brain circuitry, a program ran that identified what was necessary to stay. Adaptability, comfort in foreign environments, comfort with uncertainty, some ability to budget money, desire to meet new people and see things through to fruition. And off it went, crunching through every experience and reaction and outcome of my 6,492 odd days on the planet. And the output from all those millions of inputs was, don't get on that plane. Now, would I have come to the same conclusion if I'd sat down cross-legged on the carpet in the airport and written a list of pros and cons? Maybe, but probably not. Because like those test subjects with the numbers flashing on the screen, there were too many millions of inputs for my conscious mind to process. That's where the subconscious mind kicks in. And I'm here to submit to you that it's smarter than you are. Or at least smarter than I was that day 15 years ago. So I walked out through the sliding doors and I found my way to a long-distance overnight bus, and I pitched up the next morning in Mesot, which is a tiny town on the Thai-Burmese border, and I went to a refugee camp that was near one we'd volunteered at on the trip. And over the year that followed, I came to know many of the families that lived in that camp and to spend time in their homes and with their children and on their playing fields. And in the time that I was there, I also came to know a number of them that had sustained terrible injuries as a result of landmines along the border or at the hands of the military regime across the border in Burma. Alongside them, I came to be really good friends with a small group of Burmese political dissidents, young men mainly, who had come across the border mainly because there were death sentences on their head. And they were living in a treehouse on the Thai side of the border, publishing the Irrawaddy, which is the democratic newspaper in opposition, to peacefully document the crimes and the abuses that they had witnessed. At first, they blindfolded me when they took me to this treehouse. But over time, we became friends. And eventually, we planned together to go into Burma and film an interview with Aung San Suu Kyi, winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, who at the time was still under house arrest in the Burmese capital of Rangoon. As the only member of this tribe that had not already run away from Rangoon at the hands of the government, I was the natural candidate to take the trip. But to do that, I needed a business visa, because as part of its closing to the world, Burma had stopped issuing student visas, had stopped issuing tourist visas. And as a 17-year-old kid living on the border, I wasn't sure how I was going to go about getting one, until I remembered an English investment banker named Daryl, who I had met for an hour a year earlier at a Burma conference in London. I knew he was passionate about Burmese democracy and about filmmaking, and I was pretty sure that because of his work, he had a better shot than I did at getting a business visa. So I called him, collect from the Thai-Burmese border, and said, here's what we're up to. Would you consider taking 3 weeks off work, getting on a plane, coming to Thailand so that we can pretend to be married and go into Burma on your business visa, which seemed reasonable at the time. And to Daryl's eternal credit, he did exactly that. So we landed in Bangkok, and we went to Khao San Road, where you can get forged anything, and got a forged marriage certificate. We bought Nivea face creams to sink film in and Bic pens to wrap film around. And we cut holes in our satchel so we could film while we were cycling. And on September 15th of 1999, we spent the afternoon with Aung San Suu Kyi in Rangoon, talking about Burmese democracy and the future that she envisioned for her country. Even though we knew we would get arrested when we left that building, which we did, we eventually managed to get the majority of that film out of Burma unscathed. And the BBC radio was able to broadcast it back into Burma on shortwave so that Suu Kyi's constituents could hear her speak openly and freely. 2 weeks after I left Burma, I started at Oxford. Not because I had chosen one of the two options I had at the beginning of this story, but because I'd found a completely different path in life altogether. One focused on international relations and human rights, peace and security. And while I was there, I traveled back and forth to Southeast Asia, back to Burma, in fact, and to East Timor as a writer and a journalist. And that same path took me to the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown, where I studied international security, and to a career working 7 years in counterterrorism for the U.S. government at home and overseas. Now I run a web startup committed to supporting global nonprofits through the cash that we all spend shopping online. It's the most authentically me life that I ever could have found. And I never would have found it at the end of a list of pros and cons. So now, as the mama of a 4-year-old wild coyote cub who was born in China and stopped strangers on the street to dance London Bridge, I find myself profoundly grateful to know that she, and that all of us, however different our lives and whatever choices we face, have within ourselves this superpower, this oracle of Delphi we call intuition. So when your instinct tells you to do something unreasonable, something off the beaten path, have faith that somewhere deep in your history there are patterns that make you uniquely qualified to take the leap. Take it with both feet. You have no idea where it may lead, but wherever it does, I promise you, you'll come back with plenty of ideas worth spreading.
Here now is what Fox shared relative to what she learned while at the CIA.
If I learned one lesson from my time with the CIA, it is this. Everybody believes they're the good guy. I was an officer with the CIA clandestine service and worked undercover on counterterrorism and intelligence all around the world for almost 10 years. The conversation that's going on in the United States right now about ISIS and about the United States overseas is more oversimplified than ever. Ask most Americans whether ISIS poses an existential threat to this country, and they'll say yes. That's where the conversation stops. If you're walking down the street in Iraq or Syria and ask anybody why America dropped bombs, you get, they were waging war on Islam. And you walk in America and you ask, why were we attacked on 9/11? And you get, they hate us because we're free. Those are stories manufactured by a really small number of people on both sides who amass a great deal of power and wealth by convincing the rest of us to keep killing each other. I think the question we need to be asking as Americans examining our foreign policy is whether or not we're pouring kerosene on a candle. The only real way to disarm your enemy is to listen to them. If you hear them out, if you're brave enough to really listen to their story, you can see that more often than not, you might have made some of the same choices if you'd lived their life instead of yours. An Al-Qaeda fighter made a point once during a debriefing. He said all these movies that America makes, like Independence Day and Hunger Games and Star Wars, they're all about a small, scrappy band of rebels who will do anything in their power with the limited resources available to them to expel an outside, technologically advanced invader. And what you don't realize, he said, is that to us, to the rest of the world, you are the Empire, and we are Luke and Han. You are the aliens, and we are Will Smith. But the truth is, when you talk to the people who are really fighting on the ground, on both sides, and ask them why they're there, they answer with hopes for their children, specific policies that they think are cruel or unfair. And while it may be easier to dismiss your enemy as evil, hearing them out on policy concerns is actually an amazing thing, because as long as your enemy is a subhuman psychopath that's going to attack you no matter what you do, this never ends. But if your enemy is a policy, however complicated, that we can work with.
Events like 9/11 are manufactured lies for the purpose of fear and control, and to get people to fight each other, instead of coming together to collectively stop those who are creating the conflicts for their personal gain. In the show summary for this story, I will also include a video that has crossed my path, a video from the CBS program 60 Minutes on 9/11. Fox commented how her life changed as she went through the sliding doors from the airport into a new life in Thailand. Some may recall the movie Sliding Doors in 1998, starring Gwyneth Paltrow, a story that follows two timeline scenarios describing how one's life can change just by making or missing the closing doors of the morning train to work. Fox describes how important it is to listen to people. Later, in the final words, you'll hear a little bit more about this, the importance of building bridges and not walls to reach people. A reminder of Neil Donald's quote in his book, Tomorrow's God. Until you can see God in the face of your enemy, you cannot see God at all. For in truth, there is no such thing as an enemy. There is only that part of you existing in contrast to another part of you. God does not exist for you if he exists for you only in people and things you like. God is not real for you if she is experienced by you only in the things with which you agree. All links, including the trailer for the movie Sliding Doors, will be in the show summary for this story. In disclosure-related news for the week, over the years that CVN has been on the air, I admit I've been extremely eager to report on stories that reveal the existence of our galactic families, particularly the good members who are here to assist humanity out of its enslavement and help our planet raise its energy so it can begin to heal itself and ultimately help Earth and humanity move into a higher vibrational existence as well. I have to also admit, however, to a certain level of frustration. Some sources come out with what seems like great information, and then it is revealed that the person is not genuine, or the information turns out to be part of a disinformation campaign. As a result of that, I have to be a little careful. As eager as I am to share with everyone the existence of intelligent and beautiful life from beyond our planet, I have also had to remind myself of my journalistic morals and ethics to do my best to discern the disinformation from the possibly valuable information. As a one-person news team with no resources for extensive research and validation of sources, it is a challenge to know and trust which sources and information have truth, or at least some degree of truth, as I am feeling it to be in that particular moment of now. Without spending too much time on certain sensational sources, therefore, I have offered tidbits of information from those sources, and I have asked listeners to use their own discernment because I may not always get it right either. From what appears to be happening in the world right now, at least to those following the alternative news circles, the global cabal appears to be in a very severe state of confusion and chaos, if not deep fear. Can I prove this? Well, some of the stories I choose tries to offer information that will help to support this. Does this guarantee that the cabal is in fear? Not necessarily. However, I might argue that if the cabal was still in the state of control of the world now, as they had back in the 90s and early 2000s, then I highly doubt that the people of the world would still be awakening at the rate they are now awakening and beginning to question what's going on. If the cabal still had that power, I suspect that the world would have already been engulfed in another massive world war. I highly doubt that the cabal structures and false flags would be getting exposed at the rate they are getting exposed if this global cabal was still in any kind of control. This is how it would seem to me, anyway, and this is only my personal opinion, although many of you may choose to agree with that. With all this in mind, I turn to an article posted on June 16th by Dr. Michael Salla of the exopolitics.org website. Salla, like David Wilcock, has taken an active interest in a whistleblower named Corey Goode, who over the last year or two has been revealing information about numerous secret space programs, or SSPs, that have been in operation around Earth for several decades at least. According to Goode, there have been interactions, discussions, negotiations, and even battles taking place between good forces, both on and off Earth, as well as the not-so-good forces, both on and off of Earth. It is a truth that is getting increasingly harder to deny, and thus this may be why there appears to be an increasingly greater disclosure, called soft disclosure, albeit slowly to the world, about information beyond Earth that can help people prepare on some level for the final revelations that we are not alone in the universe and that humanity has been engaging civilizations beyond Earth and even within Earth on various levels for a very long time. Sala writes in his article that my own detailed investigation of good was released in the book Insiders Reveal Secret Space Programs and Extraterrestrial Alliances. My conclusion, Sala says, was that good is genuine, and so I consider his June 15th briefing to be a very significant disclosure of recent events involving secret space programs that have transpired over the last few months. Despite this, I still advise listeners to use discernment. The article by Sala offers some of the latest info from Good. Sala writes, on June 15th, I received an informal briefing by Secret Space Program whistleblower Corey Good about recent events that include an aerial battle over Antarctica involving various syndicate groups, meaning the Cabal or the Illuminati, that had, over the last 6 months, fled there, and also the current status of negotiations involving different extraterrestrial and inner Earth civilizations regarding the subject of open contact with humanity. Good and some of his artists provided Sala with drawings to support some of the info Good was sharing, and these drawings are included in the article for those who wish to view them. It has been speculated that many on the global cabal are beginning to flee to South America, as was suggested, perhaps sensing the net that is closing in on them around the world. Nazi Germany has been revealed to have had access to anti-gravitational transportation during the war, and it is also believed that Hitler fled to South America to Bariloche, and it is also where President Obama recently visited when he was in Argentina. It could be speculated that perhaps this is why Argentina's economy was crashed years ago, so that Cabal members could buy up huge plots of land in the mountains at highly discounted rates to support their interests, including building landing strips and so forth for emergency entrance and exits. In the article, Sala notes Good as describing that there are numerous industrial complexes, at least 6, located in Antarctica. Good has, apparently, stated that he saw the secret Antarctic cities while traveling on an Ashar spacecraft that flew about 60 feet above the surface of the ocean, directly into what looked like an Antarctic ice cliff, but which in reality was a hologram hiding the entrance to one of these cities. Good saw large buildings and 2 huge black submarines used to transport people and cargo to Antarctica being unloaded by giant cranes. These large industrial complexes had first been established in the 1930s by Nazi Germany, according to Good, and subsequently expanded in the 1950s, and after agreements had been reached with the Eisenhower administration and the U.S. military-industrial complex. Currently, these 6 Antarctica bases are used by the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate, one of the secret space programs identified by Good. In an earlier update, Good had described an increasing number of battles taking place in the skies over Antarctica, involving ships from various factions. Good noted, however, the presence of some new ships, and Good had speculated that the chevron-shaped craft, similar to ones that have been allegedly observed in sightings around the world, may be linked to what he called the Earth Alliance, a consortium of white hats from various national militaries working closely with the BRICS nations. Essentially, Good is saying that the Cabal factions appear to be turning on one another, and some of these conflicts are taking place in Antarctica. Russia is rumored to be in possession of advanced non-Earth technology, as was demonstrated by their ability to shut down the most advanced ships and planes of the U.S., while also protecting Syria with a missile shield. There is allegedly also the presence of huge spherical craft or circular-shaped craft that appeared to be observing everything going on. On this subject, the article writes, "It's possible that the craft are related to the cosmospheres, allegedly developed by the Soviet Union, which are described at length in the Peter Bater audio files." Bater was the general counsel of the Export-Import Bank from 1961 to 1967 and had high-level sources who confided to him what was happening behind the scenes in space up to the early 1980s. The cosmospheres established Soviet weapons dominance in near-Earth orbit, where they had military skirmishes with craft belonging to the U.S. Air Force Space Command and the NRO, which, according to Good, operate to about 400 miles above the Earth, and occasionally sent their most advanced craft to the moon. It is, therefore, very likely that the large spherical objects observing the Antarctic space battles were indeed cosmospheres, now under the control of President Putin and the Russian Federation. It is feasible that they provided intelligence used by the chevron-shaped spacecraft that intercepted and turned back the larger teardrop-shaped craft, leaving with their likely global elite passengers. For people new to information relating to disclosure of non-Earth life and technologies, this may be too much to take in. Please do not try to do so. Set it aside. The story may or may not be exactly as it is being shared. Details will continue to come out that may help to validate information one way or the other. For now, just observe the information that has been shared without judgment, and then allow yourself to be open to more information as it comes out in the future. The pieces will either fall into place or they will be rearranged in some other way, so as to help the most important and meaningful information to get out as truthfully as possible. I'm not yet prepared to say that all of this is true, but based on what I am seeing happen around the world, and given the fact that I know the global cabal has been sitting on incredibly advanced technologies, it is very plausible to me that the scenario described could be true. A thought also just occurred to me as I was writing this. Listeners may recall me talking about the logo designed by Russia for their World Cup soccer tournament in 2018, and how the logo has strong hints at the subject of disclosure of life beyond Earth. The soccer ball craft was a part of the logo. It is spherical in shape, and this would therefore help to validate Good's belief that it is Russia that has these spherical craft. Over to science and tech-related news now. Long-time listeners will know that many technologies and tech solutions have been covered up or suppressed for decades, or the information is only being released in small increments so that the powers controlling this cover-up could continue to profit excessively from each successive version of a released technology. Over the last few years, the amount of new tech information to come out is mind-boggling. With this advancement, however, a lot of very serious questions begin to form. Most of the questions deal with how humans will respond to this new technology, and whether or not humans will perceive it as a threat to their jobs and income, or whether they will welcome it as our society evolves beyond the world we are currently enslaved to explore how incoming technologies can allow a world to evolve where humans can begin focusing on more important things, including spiritual growth, exploration, and personal development. Who is controlling the technology, and are these people truly interested in the highest good of humanity and our planet? Will technologies be controlled purely for the profit of the global cabal, while humanity is left in poverty, debt, fear, and enslavement? Will humans seek to reject technologies if they represent a threat to one's income or one's ability to provide for oneself and his or her family? Will humans be able to let go of the ego-driven need to compete and conquer others in order to embrace a more spiritually driven lifestyle with greater harmony, peace, health, creativity, and freedom? Will technologies eventually represent a threat to humanity, such as AI, artificial intelligence? Could AI perhaps even be smart enough to turn against those who are programming them to serve in ways that are less than life-honoring? For example, if the programmers wanted AI machines to fight each other, or harm humans, or harm the planet. The question of AI is no longer a question for some future down-the-road scenario. It is here, and it is now. An article appearing on the futuristicnews.com website offered a story that explores this. An artificial intelligence has now been created that was able to teach itself a Nobel Prize-winning scientific experiment in less than 1 hour, and it was able to respond in ways that surpassed human expectations. So much so that the potential for AI to help in many other future advancements has now just gone through the roof. It is this kind of advancement that has the potential to help move humanity forward, assuming humanity is ready to choose to move forward in co-creation of a higher consciousness galactic world that is more life-honoring. When AI meets science, interesting things occur. The next few years may be massive for the scientific community, for humanity, and also for our planet.
In previous videos, we've seen how artificial intelligence is rapidly progressing, but what about the field of science? How could AI help there? Well, now it seems like we can find out. Researchers have recently just developed an artificial intelligence capable of recreating the physics experiment that won the 2001 Nobel Prize. That experiment was the creation of the Bose-Einstein condensate, the coldest object in the universe. In this video, we'll learn what the Bose-Einstein condensate is, how it's made, and the implications of AI helping in such a task. Let's begin. So firstly, what is the Bose-Einstein condensate? A Bose-Einstein condensate, or BEC for short, is a new state of matter, unobtainable in nature. It was first predicted by Indian physicist Satyendra Bose in 1925 and further developed by Einstein. So let's break this down and put it into context. In everyday life, the common states of matter are determined by the movement of the component particles. For example, in gases, the particles move around rapidly and are far apart and have a lot of energy. When you cool gases down, the particles move slower and become closer together to form liquids. Cool the temperature even further, and the particles are so close together that they can no longer freely move, but only vibrate in a structure. This is known as a solid. The important thing to note is that the motion of the particle itself is actually heat. That is, the less active particles are, the lower the temperature. Okay, so now that we've got that, let's keep cooling until we reach the next state of matter beyond the solid, the Bose-Einstein condensate. So as it turns out, if you cool things enough to about 1 million times colder than anywhere in the universe, something interesting happens. The particles become so still that they lose their individual identity and begin to behave as one. If that's not strange enough, the particles stop behaving as particles and begin to behave like waves instead. This new strange state of matter is the BEC, or Bose-Einstein condensate. BECs are some of the coldest objects in the universe, far colder than outer space, and typically less than 1/1000th of a degree above absolute zero. They do not exist in nature. Okay, so that's all well and good. But what are BECs useful for? Well, because BECs are so cold, they don't vibrate very much, and this makes them extremely sensitive to external disturbances, which allows them to make very precise measurements, such as tiny changes in the Earth's magnetic field or gravity itself. BECs have also proven very useful in exploring a wide range of questions in fundamental physics. They can also do some pretty cool things, like slow down light to a few kilometers an hour without losing any information, or allow us to understand other aspects of the universe, such as neutron stars. So now you know that Bose-Einstein condensates are very useful things in physics. The only problem with them is that they're very difficult to make. So how do you make a BEC? In basic terms, extremely precise lasers are used to nudge and bump atoms and reduce their movement so much that they enter a very still state of matter. The first time this was done was 2001, and it won 3 physicists the Nobel Prize. Okay, so now this is where things get very interesting. In May of 2016, a research team at the Australian National Universities created an artificial intelligence machine that was able to learn this Nobel Prize-winning experiment by itself, from scratch, in under 1 hour. The AI was given control of the lasers and was free to do whatever it liked. According to the researchers, this same procedure would take a simple computer program longer than the age of the universe to run through all the possible combinations. Generally speaking, it seems that AI keeps surprising us by one of 2 main ways. 1. Finding the correct solutions to problems by using methods that seem very strange to humans. Or, number 2, by just simply being better than we expect. As it turns out, both were the case here. Here's a quote from co-lead researcher Paul Wigley. Quote, "I didn't expect the machine could learn to do the experiment itself from scratch in under an hour. It did things a person wouldn't guess, such as changing one laser's power up and down and compensating with the other. It may be able to come up with complicated ways that humans haven't even thought of to get experiments colder and make measurements more precise. Next, we plan to employ the artificial intelligence to build even larger Bose-Einstein condensates faster than we've ever seen before." End quote. Dr. Michael Hush, another lead researcher on the project, says that the AI system's ability to set itself up quickly every morning and compensate for any overnight fluctuations would make this fragile technology much more useful for field measurements. Quote, "You could make a working device to measure gravity that you could take in the back of your car, and the artificial intelligence would recalibrate and fix itself no matter what. It's cheaper than taking a physicist everywhere with you." End quote. According to the research paper, other uses for such AI technology include quantum chemistry, femtosecond physics, and quantum computing. The idea of artificial intelligence theoretically being used in the field of science isn't anything new. Demis Hassabis from Google's DeepMind did mention science as an easy pick application for AI.
Well, the thing I get most excited about, if we look sort of 10 years plus out, is using the type of developing the type of technology that we've published now a lot further, and building up those capabilities so eventually we can have, say, scientific advances being assisted by AI, either AI scientists or AI assisted science, and actually making new breakthroughs with the help of machine learning, like the sort of machine learning we do.
So in conclusion, it seems like AI is just starting to turn that corner from simply being an interesting idea to actually being practical. More specifically, an AI that can easily create a BEC could have profound impacts on science and technology. If you remember in my biocomputing video, I stated that researchers were looking into alternatives to quantum computers because they were largely impractical due to the near absolute zero temperatures that they needed to even function. Previously, it would take a team of physicists a long time to painstakingly adjust parameters to get down to a temperature where a quantum computer could function. But now, artificial intelligence could do such tasks in under an hour. Breaking down this barrier now brings us one step closer to practical quantum computers and other things such as atomic lasers.
We cool down substances near absolute zero.
We're still not to absolute zero.
Yeah, we
though.
can't reach it. That's the third law of thermodynamics.
Right.
But the Nobel Prize was given to scientists like at MIT that actually created Bose-Einstein condensates in laboratory. What does that mean? Atomic lasers in the future. Okay? Some people even think that it may give us a shortcut to teleportation, a new way of just literally beam atoms across the room, if you can master the art of quantum coherence.
So I guess artificial intelligence is just scratching the surface of science, and the number of scientific breakthroughs aided by artificial intelligence in the future could be staggering. We'll just have to wait and see on this one.
It is a risky threshold that we are approaching, and whether AI becomes a friend or an enemy will likely depend upon how much of humanity chooses to awaken and begin resisting more and more of the deaths, the fears, the enslavement, and the controls that have been placed upon us. Everything is energy, regardless of whether it is an AI or any other aspect of life. Like humans, there will be AI, artificial intelligence, that will evolve to more than its programming, perhaps such as Commander Data in Star Trek. And they will be able to assist humanity in positive ways and help to control the aspects of humanity that are not acting for the highest good of all. It comes down to choice and to following one's higher purpose. It is here where I am choosing to create that anything that no longer serves humanity or the planet will be moving more and more out of existence, as it will not be able to remain in the levels of frequencies and vibrations to which humanity and our planet appear to be moving at this time. The video link will be in the show summary for this story for those who wish to review it. Finally, in health-related news, recently, while assisting my mother with a possible autoimmune reaction to dentures that she has been wearing for almost 3 years now, some research recently crossed my path that may not only help her, but possibly also help others in different ways as well. It is a molecule that is called glutathione. One doctor who appears to be very familiar with this particular molecule, also known as the mother of all antioxidants, is Dr. Mark Hyman. Several links to information offered by Hyman will appear in the show summary for this story, but here is an audio clip from Dr. Hyman outlining more about glutathione.
What is the most important molecule that you need to stay healthy and prevent disease? Hi, this is Dr. Mark Hyman. Welcome back. Now, why have most of you never heard about this? And why is it the secret to prevent aging, cancer, heart disease, dementia, and more? And why is it necessary to treat everything from autism to Alzheimer's? And why are there over 76,000 medical articles about it, and your doctor doesn't know how to address the epidemic deficiency of this critical, life-giving molecule? What is it? It's the mother of all antioxidants, the master detoxifier, and the maestro of the immune system. It's called glutathione. The good news is your body produces its own glutathione. The bad news is that our poor diet, pollution, toxins, medications, stress, trauma, aging, infections, and radiation all deplete your body's glutathione levels. And this leaves you susceptible to unrestrained cell disintegration from oxidative stress and free radicals, to infections and cancer, and your liver gets overloaded, making it damaged and unable to do its job of detoxification. So, in treating chronically ill patients using functional medicine over the last 10 years, I have found that glutathione deficiency is found in nearly all of my very ill patients. Those who have chronic fatigue, heart disease, cancer, chronic infections, autoimmune diseases, diabetes, autism, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, arthritis, asthma, kidney problems, liver disease, you name it. If you're very sick, you likely have a glutathione deficiency. Now, at first I thought this was just coincidental when I saw this, but over the years I've come to realize that our ability to produce and maintain a high level of this glutathione molecule in our bodies is critical to recovery from nearly all chronic illness, and to prevent disease, and to maintain optimal health and performance. And so have the authors of the 76,000 medical articles on glutathione. Okay, so what's glutathione? What does it do for us? And how can we get more of it? Well, glutathione is a very simple molecule that's produced naturally all the time in your body. It's a combination of 3 simple building blocks we call amino acids: cysteine, glycine, and glutamate. The secret of its power is the sulfur chemicals it contains. Sulfur is a very sticky, smelly molecule. It sort of acts like flypaper, and all the bad things in the body stick onto it. Free radicals and toxins like mercury and other heavy metals. Normally, it's recycled in the body, except when the toxic load becomes too high. And that explains why we're in such trouble. In my practice, I test for the genes involved in glutathione metabolism. Genes involved in producing the enzymes that allow the body to produce and recycle the glutathione. And I have lots of names, GSTM1 and GSTP1 and so on. The fact is that we all evolved in a time before there were 80,000 toxic industrial chemicals that were introduced into our world, before electromagnetic radiation was everywhere, before we polluted our lakes and rivers and skies and oceans and teeth with dental amalgams and with mercury and lead. And that's why we often got by with just a basic version of the genetic detoxification software that's encoded in their DNA. And it's sort of mediocre at getting rid of toxins in the body. We just really didn't need more. Who knew we would be poisoning ourselves and eating a processed, nutrition-depleted diet? That's why almost half of the population has a limited capacity to get rid of toxins. They're missing GSTM1 function. And nearly all my very sick patients, including me, which explains why I became mercury poisoned and why I suffer from chronic fatigue, are missing this particular gene. And that makes them the yellow canaries in the coal mine. And that may be up to 1/3 to 1/2 of our population who suffers from chronic disease. So why is glutathione so important? Well, it recycles all the antioxidants in the body. It helps us deal with free radicals. And dealing with free radicals is like handling a hot potato, right? The free radical gets passed around. It goes from vitamin C to vitamin E to lipoic acid and then finally to glutathione, which cools it off and recycles the other antioxidants. And then the body can reduce or regenerate another protective glutathione molecule. And we're back in business. The problem occurs when we're overwhelmed with too much oxidative stress or too many toxins. Then glutathione becomes depleted, leading us towards some terrible illness. And we can no longer protect ourselves against free radicals or infections or cancer, and we can't get rid of toxins, and this leads to further accumulation and further illness. Glutathione is also critical in helping your immune system do its job of fighting infections and preventing cancer, and that's why studies show that it can help even in the treatment of AIDS. Glutathione is also the most critical and integral part of your detoxification system. All the toxins stick onto glutathione, which then carries it in the bile and the stool and out of our body. So that's great. And lastly, it helps us reach peak mental and physical functioning. And in fact, research has shown that raised glutathione levels actually decrease muscle damage, reduce recovery time, increase strength and endurance, and shift metabolism from fat production to muscle development. So if you're sick or old or just not in peak shape, you likely have glutathione deficiency. In fact, the top British medical journal, The Lancet, found that the highest glutathione levels were found in healthy young people, a little bit lower in healthy elderly, and lower still in the sick elderly, and the lowest of all was in the hospitalized sick elderly. So keeping yourself healthy, boosting your performance, preventing disease and aging will depend on keeping your glutathione levels high. So the reason that glutathione is so important is that it's responsible for keeping so many of the keys to ultra wellness optimized. It's critical for immune function, controlling inflammation. It's the master detoxifier. It's the main antioxidant and protects our cells and our energy metabolism. So what about the good news? Okay, I give you a lot of bad news. The good news is you can do a lot of things to increase this natural and critical molecule in your body. So you can eat glutathione boosting foods, you can exercise, and you can take glutathione boosting supplements. All right, so let's talk about what to eat. What should you eat if you want to boost glutathione? First, I want you to enjoy sulfur-containing foods. So the main ones are garlic and onions and the broccoli family, your cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, kale, collard, cabbage, cauliflower, watercress, all these great foods that are full of powerful sulfur-containing molecules. Also, you can use bioactive whey protein. Remember Little Miss Muffet and her curds and whey, right? That clear liquid that comes off on the top of yogurt. This is the greatest source of cysteine and amino acid building blocks for glutathione synthesis. And I'm not a big fan of dairy, as you know, but there's an exception with a few warnings. The whey protein must be bioactive. It must be made from non-denatured proteins, which means the denatured protein is a breakdown of normal protein structure. It should be from non-pasteurized and non-industrially produced milk, which makes it free of pesticides, hormones, and antibiotics. There's one called Immunocal, which is actually prescription bioactive non-denatured whey protein that's even listed in the physician's desk reference. Okay, What about exercise? What type of exercise? Well, exercise is pretty straightforward. So not over-exercise, because that depletes glutathione, but regular exercise boosts your glutathione and helps your immune system and so on. So start slowly, build up to 30 minutes a day of vigorous aerobic exercise like walking or jogging or sports, which I like tennis or basketball. Strength training, 20 minutes 3 times a week is also helpful. And lastly, you can take some glutathione-boosting supplements. So it would be easy just to take glutathione as a pill, right? But the body digests the protein, and you don't get the benefits. It also requires lots of different nutrients to support the production of glutathione in the body. So the main factors that involved and need to be taken consistently to boost glutathione, means every day, I'm going to tell you about. First, besides taking your multivitamin and fish oil, supporting my glutathione levels is the most important thing I do every day for my health. So the first one I use is something called N-acetylcysteine, or NAC, or NAC. This has been used for lots of years in medical practice to help treat asthma and lung disease, to treat people with life-threatening liver failure even in the emergency room from Tylenol. But now it's even used to prevent kidney damage from dyes used in a hospital from X-ray studies. So it's got a lot of widespread application. The next is alpha-lipoic acid, and this is a close second to glutathione in the importance in protecting our cells and energy production and blood sugar control and many things. We make in our bodies, but we often become depleted. Next, and this is critical because there's 2 cycles here. I've written about this methylation cycle before, but this cycle of B12, folate, and B6 is critical for helping the body continue to produce the glutathione. Very critical, folate, B6, and B12. And lastly, we need selenium and the family of antioxidants and milk thistle, which is an herb, all of which can help boost glutathione levels. So remember, if you want to stay healthy, make sure your glutathione levels are up and functioning well.
This video clip will be in the show summary, but also an article by Dr. Hyman that appeared on the Huffington Post website back in 2010, outlining the benefits of glutathione. Other links and information, including how glutathione may be able to help with Parkinson's disease, will be offered for those wishing to learn more. One way to help restabilize the body may involve the endocannabinoid system, and it is this system that stands to gain from the rapidly expanding awareness of and demand for cannabis and cannabis-based products. The reputation of its natural and holistic benefits have been covered up due to the criminalization of the plant in the past. The health properties are believed to be so significant that it would threaten the profits of big pharma and the business of big medicine, while also helping to strengthen and empower people as they become more aware of how they have been controlled and enslaved by all the structures and systems created by the various factions of this global cabal group. Cannabis does not have to be smoked, however, as most people either know or are now learning. An article appearing on the healthyholisticliving.com website in an undated posting writes that the marijuana plant's leaves and buds are actually loaded with antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and anti-cancer compounds. These compounds are known as cannabidiols, and they make marijuana, cannabis, or whatever you want to call it, a superfood. When heated, the psychoactive compound tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC, is released from the plant. Most people don't want medicine to get high, though. Our bodies were made to receive cannabidiols, and the plant does not need to be heated to get these healing properties. We have cannabinoid receptors built into our bodies. Getting CBD into your body can normalize functional systems like cell communication and immune functions. This means that the systems that make up your body, from cells to organs, will talk to each other better, have a better understanding of what's going on, and help to clean things up. The article also adds that CBDs bridge the gap of neurotransmission in the central nervous system by providing a two-way system of communication that completes a positive feedback loop, says Dr. William Courtney, a medical marijuana expert and founder of Cannabis International. This is instead of a one-way transmission which promotes chronic inflammation. CBDs mimic the body's natural two-way communications system. Dr. Ethan Rousseau, a Seattle area physician and senior advisor to GW Pharmaceuticals, was quoted in the article as saying that the endogenous cannabinoid system acts as a modulator in fine-tuning a lot of these systems. And if something is deranged biochemically in a person's body, it may well be that a cannabinoid system can bring things back into balance. There may be some who dispute this next part, but the article includes some of the disadvantages to smoking, vaporizing, or even cooking cannabis in foods. The article notes that smoking promotes inflammation, which leads to infection and potential dysfunction or communication breakdowns in your body. While lots of doctors suggest vaporizing over smoking, most promote edibles over vaporizing. But you still need to heat up the drug to make edibles. That's why, medically speaking, juicing the plant works best. Cannabis, as a food source, is apparently great for treating autoimmune disorders, cellular dysfunction, chronic inflammation, and also cancer cells. The website leafscience.com offered their 5 reasons to juice cannabis in July of 2014. In this article, their 5 reasons offered were as follows. Number 1, for those wanting to avoid getting high, juicing allows this. Number 2, you can take higher doses. Dr. William Courtney, also quoted in this article, reports that in its acid form, hundreds of milligrams of THC can be taken daily, but when heated, this drops to 10 milligrams a day. Cannabis juice also contains CBDA, the acid form of CBD. Number 3, versatility. It can be taken anywhere, and also with other foods and even in the car. Any place where smoking or vaporizing might be inconvenient. Number 4, to avoid smoking. Smoking may lead to inflammation in some people, which can lead to other conditions. And number 5, treat disease. Cannabinoids have been shown to possess antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and neuroprotective properties, making them a powerful dietary supplement. Hippocrates is credited with saying, "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." Juicing cannabis may be one solution that may offer a solution to help either you or a loved one. In this week's final words, I am not a fan of boxing. Period. I particularly have lost interest in sports that have excessively physical contact with the potential for injury. In fact, I really don't have much interest at all in supporting the commercialism of sporting events, although if I am with a group of people enjoying a sporting event, sometimes one has to, quote-unquote, take one for the team, as the expression goes, meaning simply, if you value certain friendships or relationships, compromises have to be made from time to time. At least 2 sporting greats recently graduated from this physical life back home to the life beyond life. Hockey great Gordie Howe and champion boxer Muhammad Ali. This week's Final Words offers a touching eulogy of Ali given by comedian Billy Crystal. As you listen to these words, recall back to what was shared earlier by Amaryllis Fox, the importance of following intuition and of taking the appropriate steps when you are guided to. There is a transcending message of peace, of tolerance, of friendship, acceptance, and of unconditional support, regardless of the challenges when one considers the cultures and religions of these 2 individuals. It is perhaps a lesson for the ages, for those willing to read between the lines of what Crystal shares. This week's Final Words is a bit longer than normal, but it is my hope that you will find it worthwhile to listen to. Create a wonderful week. Until our next moment of now, I leave you with Billy Crystal's eulogy for Muhammad Ali, and at the approximate 8.5-minute mark, I have inserted a short clip of a video posted by Crystal himself doing 15 rounds of Ali's life, a link to the full version of which will also be included in the show summary.
This outpouring of love and respect proves that 35 years after he stopped fighting,
he is still the champion of the world. Every moment I can think of is cherished, and while others can tell you of his accomplishments, he wanted me to speak and tell you of some personal moments that we had together. I met him in 1974. I was just getting started as a stand-up comedian and struggling, but I had one good routine. It was a 3-minute conversation between Howard Cosell and Muhammad Ali, where I would imitate both of them. Ali had just defeated George Foreman and regained the heavyweight title. Sport magazine made him the man of the year, and Dick Schaap, a wonderful writer and a great man, was the editor for Sport, and he was going to host this televised dinner honoring Muhammad Ali. So Dick called my agent looking for a comedian who did some sports material. As fate would have it, that comedian was not available, and she wisely said, "It's destiny, man." And she wisely said, "But listen, I got this young kid, and he does this great imitation of Ali and Cosell. He'd be perfect for you." So I don't know why, but Dick said, "Okay, I'll try him. If he stinks, I can cut him out of the show." I couldn't believe it. My first time on television, and it would be with Ali. I arrived at the Plaza Hotel. The event was jammed. I met Mr. Schaap, who would later become a part of my family. And he said, "Well, how should I introduce you? Nobody knows who you are." And I said, "Just say I'm one of Ali's closest and dearest friends." And my thought was, I'll get right to the microphone, go into my Howard Cosell, and I'll be fine. And then I nervously moved into the jammed ballroom, and that's when I saw him for the first time in person. It's very hard to describe how much he meant to me. You had to live in his time. It's great to look at clips, and it's amazing that we have them, but to live in his time, experiencing the genius of his talent, was absolutely extraordinary. He was funny. He was beautiful. He was the most perfect athlete you ever saw, and those were his own words. But he was so much more than a fighter as time went on. With Bobby Kennedy gone, Martin Luther King gone, Malcolm X gone. Who was there to relate to when Vietnam exploded in our face? There were millions of young men my age, eligible for the draft for a war that we didn't believe in, all of us huddled on the conveyor belt that was rapidly feeding the war machine. But it was Ali who stood up for us by standing up for himself. After he was stripped of the title and the right to fight anywhere in the world, he gave speeches at colleges and on television that totally reached me. He seemed as comfortable talking to kings and queens as the lost and unrequited. He never lost his sense of humor, even as he lost everything else. He was always himself, willing to give up everything for what he believed in. And his passionate rhetoric about the life and plight of black people in our country resonated strongly in my house. I grew up in a house that was dedicated to civil rights. My father was a producer of jazz concerts in New York City and was one of the first to integrate bands in the 40s and 50s. Jazz musicians referred to my dad as the Branch Rickey of jazz. My uncle and my family, Jewish people, produced Strange Fruit, Billie Holiday's classic song describing the lynching of African Americans in this country. And so I felt him. And now there he was, just a few feet from me. I couldn't stop looking at him, and he seemed to, like, glow. And he was, like, in slow motion, his amazing face smiling and laughing. I was seated a few seats from him on the dais. And in the room were all of these athletes in their individual sports, great ones. Mr. Schaap introduced me as one of Ali's closest and dearest friends. 2 people clapped, my wife and the agent. I rose, Ali still staring at me. I passed right behind him, got to the podium, went right into the Cosell. Hello, everyone. Howard Cosell coming to you live from Zaire. Some would pronounce it Zaire. They're wrong. It got big laughs. And then I went into the Ali. Everybody's talking about George Foreman. I want to talk about George Foreman. George Foreman was ugly. He's so slow. George was slow. I come on, boop, boop, boop. And then I rope-a-dope George, and I'm so fast at 33 years of age. I'm so fast I can turn up the lights, be in my bed before the room gets dark. Howard, I'm announcing tonight that I got new religious beliefs. From now on, I want to be known as Izzy Yiskowitz. I am now an Orthodox Jew. Izzy Yiskowitz, I am the greatest of all time. The audience exploded. See, no one had ever done him before. And here he was, a white kid from Long Island, imitating the greatest of all time, and he was loving it. And when I was done, he gave me this big bear hug and he whispered in my ear, "You're my little brother," which is what he always called me until the last time that I saw him. We were always there for each other. If he needed me for something, I was there. He came to anything I asked him to do. Most memorable, he was an honorary chairman for a dinner and a very important event where I was being honored by the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. He did all of this promotion for it. He came to the dinner. He sat with my family for the entire evening. He took photographs with everybody. The most famous Muslim man in the world honoring his Jewish friend. And because he was there, we raised a great deal of money. And I was able to use it to endow the university in Jerusalem with something that I told him about. And it was something that he loved the theory of. And it thrives to this day. It's called Peace Through the Performing Arts. It's a theater group where Israeli, Arab, and Palestinian actors, writers, and directors all work together in peace, creating original works of art. And that doesn't happen without him. I had so many funny, unusual moments with him. I sat next to him at Howard Cosell's funeral, a very somber day to be sure. Closed casket was on the stage. Muhammad and I were sitting somewhere over there next to each other. And he quietly whispered to me, "Little brother, do you think he's wearing his hairpiece?" So I said, "I don't think so." "Well, then how will God recognize him?" So I said, "Champ, once he opens his mouth, God will know." So we started laughing. It was a muffled laugh at first, but then we couldn't contain ourselves. Here we were at a funeral, me with Muhammad Ali, laughing like two little kids who heard something dirty in church. You know, we're just laughing and laughing. And then he looked at me and he whispered, "Howard was a good man." One time he asked me if I would like to run with him one morning, do road work with him. I said, "Well, that'd be amazing. Where do you run?" He said, "Well, I run at this country club, and I run on a golf course early in the morning. It's very private. Nobody bothers me. We'll have a great time." I said, "Champ, I can't run there. The club has a reputation for being restricted." "Well, it's restricted me. They don't allow Jews there. They don't have any Jewish members." He was incensed. "I'm a black Muslim, and they let me run there. Little brother, I'm never going to run there again." And he didn't. My favorite memory perhaps was 1979. He had just retired, and there was a retirement party at the Forum, Los Angeles, for Muhammad and 20,000 of his closest friends in Los Angeles. I performed a piece that I had created. The imitation had grown into a life story. It's called 15 Rounds. And I play him from the age of 18 until he's 36, ready for the rematch with Leon Spinks. I posted it on the internet last week, footage that nobody had ever seen before, of me portraying Ali, doing his life for him all those years ago in 1979. There were 20,000 people there, but I was doing it only for him. It's one of my favorite performances that I've ever done in my life. I sort of got lost in him. I didn't even know where I was.
I am Muhammad Ali. I will never be known as Cassius Clay again. Cassius Clay is a slave's name. I'm now a disciple of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I'm now a black Muslim minister. I am now Muhammad Ali.
In the top of the news today, the eyes of the sports world to focus on Houston, Texas, where heavyweight champion Muhammad Ali, also known as Cassius Clay, is expected to refuse military induction on the grounds of being a religious conscientious objector. Another news of Vietnam buildup continues.
I will not fight in this war. This war is an unjust war. I cannot, will not fight.
Step forward when I call your name, please. Cassius Clay. Cassius Clay.
Gentlemen, please, I have a brief statement. As Commissioner of the New York State Boxing Association, we are issuing the following proclamation. A few hours ago, heavyweight champion Muhammad Ali, also known as Cassius Clay, refused military induction. We are hereby stripping him of the heavyweight title. Now. The State Department is also revoking his passport. Therefore, he will not be licensed to fight any place in the world, including exhibitions.
Today, June 20th, 1967, Ali today was convicted of draft evasion, fined $10,000, sentenced to 5 years in prison. There will be an appeal. at the end of the performance, and suddenly I'm backstage with another heavyweight champion, Richard Pryor. And Pryor is holding on to me, crying, and then I see Ali coming. And he's got a full head of steam, and he's looking only at me, and he nudged Mr. Pryor aside, and he whispered in my ear with a big bear hug, "Little brother, you made my life better than it was." But didn't he make all of our lives a little bit better than they were? That, my friends, is my history with a man. And I've labored to come up with a way to describe the legend. He was a tremendous bolt of lightning, created by Mother Nature out of thin air, a fantastic combination of power and beauty. We've seen still photographs of lightning bolts at the moment of impact, ferocious in its strength, magnificent in its elegance. And at the moment of impact, it lights up everything around it, so you can see everything clearly. Muhammad Ali struck us in the middle of America's darkest night, in the heart of its most threatening gathering storm. His power toppled the mightiest of foes, and his intense light shined on America, and we were able to see clearly injustice, inequality, poverty, pride, self-realization, courage, laughter, love, joy, and religious freedom for all. Ali forced us to take a look at ourselves. This brash young man who thrilled us, angered us, confused, and challenged us ultimately became a silent messenger of peace, who taught us that life is best when you build bridges between people, not walls. My friends, only once in 1,000 years or so do we get to hear a Mozart, or see a Picasso, read a Shakespeare. Ali was one of them, and yet, at his heart, he was still a kid from Louisville who ran with the gods and walked with the crippled and smiled at the foolishness of it all. He is gone, but he will never die. He was my big brother. Thank you.
So that is a sample of the unfolding higher consciousness news around the world this week. Cosmic Vision News is broadcast weekly from the CosmicVisionNews.com website. Links to stories used in this broadcast are published in the show summary, available on the blog on the website. CVN can be followed through its Facebook page, Scene page, and YouTube channel, as well as on Twitter, Google+, and LinkedIn. Thank you for sharing your time with me this week. I'm Jeffrey West, reminding you that the problem in our world is not civil disobedience. The problem is linked more to our civil obedience. Your life has purpose. Your story is important. Your dreams count. Your voice matters. And you were born to make an impact. Until our next moment of now, stay grounded in love, hold the vision of light and peace in your hearts, and keep your eyes to the skies because disclosure is unfolding all around you. Namaste.